Welcome to Restored Lives. My name is Eric Castenskield and I really want to welcome you to this first session on Restored Lives. It can take a bit of courage and bravery really to come on the course. I remember when I came on this course a number of years ago how fearful I suppose I was, anxious. I really didn't want to be here on this course. So the first thing I want to do today on behalf of the course, the leaders and the helpers is to welcome you onto this course. Well done for making it here. It's a courageous choice to come onto this course. So I want to say well done. You're in the right place. You may all be at slightly different situations and backgrounds in relationship breakdown. Some of you maybe have divorced for many years. Others may have just separated, maybe in the last couple of weeks. Some of you may have children, others not. Some of you might be thinking about and hoping for reconciliation in your relationship. But I want to say for all of you, whatever your background and situation, you are in the right place. Restored Lives is a charity. It's been designed and created by a number of different professionals from different backgrounds. And the course is running it's running across the world now. And thousands of people have been through the course and found that they are able to move forward more successfully in their situation, in their relationship breakdown. So I want to really encourage you. You are in the right place. Many of you will probably feel isolated and alone. It's so easy to become separated from other people, to feel that everyone else has a better life, to feel that your situation is so difficult. You feel isolated and alone. I want to reassure you that here on this course, you are not alone. We have all been through the issues on relationship breakdown. Everyone here on your course has experienced the issues and the feelings of relationship breakdown. We are not here to judge, but to support you, to help you through the course teachings and the small group sessions, to help you to be able to move on more successfully in your current situation. Let me tell you a little bit about my background. How do I get to be here? Well, I met a lady called Karen. I still remember the first time we met. We laughed. We just laughed a lot together. We connected quite quickly and we went out with each other for 4 years. We had a fun relationship. We had lots of shared interests. We did a lot of sport together. A lot of our values were similar. We had a lot of fun. And after about 4.5 years, we got married. And I have to say at the time, if you'd asked both of us, we both said that this would be for life. Our marriage was good. We continued our mutual interests. We had a wide family. We enjoyed family things. We did a lot of things together. We had a good relationship. Then, one day, it was a Sunday morning, on about the 18th of March, a number of years ago, she turned to me in bed and stated to me that she was having an affair. I remember that morning as clear as day. I remember the light shining through the window. I remember the way she said those words, I'm having an affair. I remember the smell of the room. I remember my reaction initially, which was just bewilderment. I'm having an affair. My world turned upside down from that moment on. I was trying to work out what was going on. I spent the first 7 days trying to work out what was going on, but I thought that we had agreed that we would try and make this work. But I soon found out that she was trying to keep her relationship going, which she had with a friend at work, Tim. I felt lost, depressed, completely beside myself. In that uncertain time, it was just desperate. I didn't know which way to go, left or right. I didn't know what had happened. She'd been having this affair for 6 months without me or any of our friends knowing. So I had to start working out what had happened 6 months ago or 9 months ago that had caused this to happen. Was I that stupid? Was I that foolish not to realise? Not to spot what was going on? I remember the horror of the situation. I remember the lies, the deception. I remember the wasted time. Karen had wanted me to get to know Tim because he was a good friend. I remember all the desperate dark times. I remember the depression that I had, these clouds of darkness coming over me. I drank too much. I couldn't sleep at night, and I'd find myself walking the streets of London, lost at about sort of 2 or 3 in the morning. I suppose I was lost in body, mind and spirit. In the end, Karen couldn't get back together again with Tim, but neither did she want to get back with me. And so it ended. It felt like it was so easily thrown away. It took me a while to start rebuilding my life. Talking to friends, coming on the course, they all helped. And in due time I started looking more deeply at relationships, at how to make relationships work. I suppose I should have looked at that many years beforehand. And I was not always successful because the pain inside me would sort of come out into my other relationships. But in due course, I did recover, using many of the tools and skills that we're going to talk about on the course. I have rebuilt my life. Now my friends and family will say that our relationships are deeper and better, actually partly because of the things that I went through at that time. It's not what I wanted, but that was my journey. And I can now say honestly that I have a fully restored life. Many of the things that I learned we're going to go through on the course together, but we've combined my experience as well as loads of other professionals and other people's experience to pull together this course. And we're going to be going through the tools and skills that will help you get through your relationship breakdown. The course is set out into 8 sessions. In the first 7 sessions, we're going to be looking at the building blocks to help you move forward successfully. And each building block is really vital to help you recover. But even more than that, actually, this will help you build stronger, better relationships in the future. So today, we're going to be looking at the impact that relationship breakdown has on you, on your feelings and emotions. The next session, we're going to be looking at communication and conflict resolution. The following session, we're going to be looking at letting go of the pain and the hurt. Things like acceptance and forgiveness. In the next session, we're going to be looking at how relationship affects all your relationships. Then we're going to be looking at another session for third-party help, people like lawyers, counsellors, people that can help you. And then in one of the final sessions, we're going to be looking at moving forward. How do you move forward successfully? Each one of these sessions will bring you to a place where you can be confident of being able to move forward and recover well. One fact to hold on to is that we can't change the past. Neither can we change our ex. But we can change the way we deal with the past and deal with our ex. And that will change your future and give you hope for the future. I like the quote from the famous psychologist Jung. He expresses this concept in this way: I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become. And this means that there is hope for you. Amidst the despair, the darkness, the anxiety, the uncertainty that you will be happening, amidst all the questions of why is this happening to me? What is going to go on? There is hope. There is hope for a fulfilling, exciting future for you. And the stories that you will hear on the course from all the people that will be contributing will hopefully give you and enable you to see that that hope is real. We're now going to play a short teaser for this session, and it gives you a flavour of what's going to come tonight. Have a look at this.
I didn't want to come to start with. I couldn't imagine myself going on a course like this. But I decided that I would go along the first week, and if it was really terrible, I wouldn't come back again.
I felt very angry, extremely hurt, betrayed, predominantly extremely angry. I mean, I was consumed with the injustice of it all.
All the while, your mind is like a washing machine, and it's going tick, 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 tick with everything in your head, but you can't show it, and you've got to stay calm for the children and give them a loving environment. So I used to find myself crying in the shower, because then they wouldn't hear me or know I was crying.
I think I was in shock for a long time. It felt like being hit by a train, and every morning it felt like another carriage was rolling over the top of me, and it took quite a long time to sort of get back on my feet. I think the shock part probably lasted for about 3 months, and then I was just left with a really deep sadness.
It felt quite strange the first week, but I was really glad I went. And once I got talking to everybody, I felt so welcome, and I actually felt like I belonged, and people actually understood. They understood what I was going through and how I felt, and it was a really safe place to talk about how I was feeling.
I was a very angry chap, and they were very supportive, and it was lovely to speak to people going through the same thing as I was at that time. So that was a huge, huge help. There was absolutely light at the end of the tunnel, but I won't sugarcoat it. It does take time.
We're now going to have some time in your groups, and you may feel a little bit worried about meeting up in your groups, but let me encourage you not to be. It's often one of the things people most enjoy about the course. The small groups are places where you can hopefully talk openly about your situation and possibly share some of your hardest moments that you've had to experience. Because of that, we'd ask you to keep everything confidential. That you speak in the group, please keep it confidential to your group. Obviously within the normal safeguarding of rules. And so we ask that you don't talk about any of the things that you talk about now outside the group. We hope that everyone can participate in these discussions, but you don't have to. You have the right to remain silent if you want to. And there may be times on the course where you're asked a question and you just really not up to answering it at that time. And that's fine. Please just say pass, no, not at the moment. That's absolutely fine. We hope that you can all participate, so we will encourage everyone to be able to discuss the things that you want to discuss. We have got lots of time for you to talk, and so, but it is split up into different sections and segments. And so if you don't get a chance to speak in one session, don't worry. There will be other slots and chances for you to talk about the thing you want to talk about most. And please don't feel worried that your group leader may have to curtail your discussion or move the discussion onto someone else, just to give everyone the chance to talk. I hope that you will find that these discussions are precious, and obviously treat everyone's comments with the respect that you would want of your own comments. I know that you're going to enjoy these small groups. So let's go into our groups and discuss the question, how did you come to be on the course? A few people find that their divorce is relatively painless. However, many other people find that they are impacted by a profound loss. And so we're now going to spend the next little section talking about the pain of relationship breakdown. When a relationship ends, the emotional impact can be enormous. For some, it is a huge sense of relief, but for many of us, we are profoundly impacted by the pain and the loss. And in some ways, it can feel a bigger impact than actually losing someone through a death, losing a spouse through a death. Because in that situation, the family and friends all gather around that person, and they are the sole focus of their attention and support. We have not just lost our role as a couple, we have sustained a series of related losses. We have lost our daily habits and routines. We have lost having someone by our side with whom to share life's ups and downs with. We may have lost our home, our financial security. Divorce has a huge impact on finances. We may have lost our dreams, our vision for the future. If we have children, we may have lost daily contact with them. Maybe you are actively with your children all the time, but have lost the support of someone with you on a regular basis. We may feel the loss of our self-esteem, the loss of our place in our social network, where we fit in life. Even if separation was your choice and ultimately for the good, we have a loss of what might have been, our futures, our family together when we're grandparents. For many of us, this loss causes us to limp around with the pain of relationship breakdown. And we need to pinpoint now the real underlying cause for the loss and the pain that you feel. It's no good just trying to leave it or run away from it. Now, some of you will ask, why lift the cover on all that pain? Why talk about that pain? The thing about pain that we carry inside us is that it becomes a little bit like a landmine. Any unexplained trigger may trigger off a whole explosion. And that can be either in outbursts of anger, depression, and as well as that, it's like mental torture. It's bad for our physical health. The point is that pain, physical or emotional, needs to have action on it. We can't just run away from it. and hope that these landmines just disappear in time. And the good news is that there are ways of dealing with them. I want to take you through the process, the journey that is ahead of you to get through to a complete recovery. In your manuals, there is a diagram which shows the journey through divorce and separation. And this gives you an idea of the stages that are involved in the recovery process. In that diagram, you start on the left-hand side. And then when the issues of separation occur, you can quickly fall into that valley of depression, despair, of general lowness. Then, hopefully you have some seeds of acceptance and of hope, which will slowly and gradually lift you up. Our recovery is full of lots of ups and downs. It's a slow process. But the long, difficult climb is made much easier and quicker by the choices that you make along that route. For me, acceptance and forgiveness and the process of letting go were really important for me. Interestingly, it's not that time is the healer. Instead, it's the choices that we make which dictate the pace and the speed of our recovery. And in the end, we finish at a higher level than we started at the beginning of the process. Some of you won't feel that pain that much at the moment, and that's a great position to be in. But don't be frightened or surprised when other people react in a different way to tonight's session. Because what happens tonight is often that there's a bit of release of all the feelings that have been tied up inside you. It's like bursting a balloon. That can come out. The important thing for all of us, whatever situation you're in, whatever you feel, is that understanding your feelings will enable you to recover at a quicker rate. We all know that going through divorce and separation is a difficult process, particularly the early stages of separation, when we can quickly go from an interesting, normal human being into a mixed up bag of emotions where you don't know whether to go left or right or stay still. I can only assure you that that downward spiral, that downward cycle of confused emotions is only temporary. That confused state of mind was well described by Colin Montgomerie. Colin Montgomerie is one of the world's best golfers. He was Ryder Cup captain. And he was married to Ima. They were married for 16 years, and they have 3 children. In an interview, quickly after the couple separated, this is what he said. She snapped, eyeing me with a cold contempt. She announced that she had finally had enough. Golf, she pronounced, had taken over my life to the point where I would do better on my own. The marriage might as well be over. In fact, it was over in her eyes. I knew at once that this was serious, but my overriding feeling was one of fury. Half of me wanted to scream at her. Instead of retaliating, I put my head down and walked into the night. Although at that stage I was feeling wronged and self-righteous, I thought fleetingly of how I would feel if Ima were not there for me. To say that I was shattered is an understatement. I felt that everything I had done, everything I had achieved, just fell through the floor. I cried a lot. It was a bad, bad time. I felt a failure immediately. And I felt that my whole life had just come to a complete and grinding halt. I started trampling the streets of London. I spent a month in a hotel in which I left the hotel at about 10 p.m. each night and would return foot-weary and heavy-hearted at 3 in the morning or even later. Sometimes people would look at me with recognition in their faces, but then they'd think it couldn't be Colin Montgomery, the golfer, walking the streets at this time of night. I was disturbed at the sight of regular families. Every time I saw them, I felt like going up to them and saying, "Do you realize how lucky you are?" And although Colin and Ima did get back together for a period of time, they did subsequently divorce. Now, that gives you a strong sense of the powerful emotions that are involved in the separation stage, at the relationship breakdown. And many of us may well relate to what Colin was describing there. Equally, our feelings may be slightly different. You may be feeling something slightly different to that. This is a good moment to recognizing what you are feeling. What we'll do now is I'll just encourage you actually as a group to shout out what you are feeling, and then we'll note them down. That's a huge list of emotions and feelings. And we're going to spend the next section just discussing those a little bit more. And Marilyn is going to come up and talk to us a bit about her experience of these issues and how she's been able to deal with them.
Hi, good evening. My name is Marilyn, and I first came on this course about 5 years ago when my husband and I separated. We'd been separated about 6 months at the time. And I'm always really very choked on this first night, because when I came on the course and I saw that sign that said recovery from divorce and separation, I just didn't think it was me. I started crying before I walked through the door, and I was just really reluctant to accept that label. And I cried through that whole night, and there's nobody crying here tonight, so I'm very impressed with you. I found it very difficult to sort of think that was, where I belonged. This is an incredible list, and I remember feeling pretty much everything that you've talked about this evening. And as Erica said, part of beginning the process of recovery is to pinpoint what you're feeling and to figure out why you're feeling various things, what you are actually feeling. And what is causing those feelings. For most of us, it'll be fear. Fear of being left alone, fear of having to raise children on your own, fear of losing your children, all sorts of things. And I definitely found that one of the steps for recovery for me was trying to figure out what I was feeling and why. I experienced pretty much everything, as I've said, at different times and in different degrees. I don't know about you, but sometimes I just thought my feelings would drown me. They just felt so overwhelming, and they're really physical. I mean, I just really felt all the turmoil and all the pain. Somebody said felt like my arm being cut off. I felt that physical pain from some of the things I was going through. Initially, the initial months and weeks, I would say that the feelings of anger, betrayal, jealousy, very deep hurt and full-on hatred. I mean, I really, you guys are very nice. I would lie in bed and just think if his plane would crash, everything would be fine. If he would just drop dead, I could somehow make things work. It seemed at the time that it would be easier than having to go through the pain of acknowledging a separation, taking any responsibility, and dealing with it. I thought if he just dropped out of the sky, I wouldn't have to do that. So I said my mind was in constant turmoil. I couldn't sleep. I tried everything to try and get my ex to see things my way. And when I look back now, I think it's quite a miracle that I didn't fall into a very deep depression or have some sort of breakdown, the way my mind was working. I certainly broke down in tears quite a few times in front of my children, which, although it's normal, in the long run, it's not ideal. At the time, I don't think I mentioned, my children were 6 and 8, so they were quite little, and I was dealing with all the guilt as well of them not having their dad there. It's important to stress that in this time, just following a breakup or trying to figure out what's going on, depression is very normal. And I would really recommend that if you feel you're not coping, if the tears just won't stop, if you just can't seem to figure out a way to cope, that you talk to your GP or talk to a professional counsellor. Don't let it fester. There was a guy in our group once who was so depressed that he had put his head in the sand and was signing everything that came by his way because his wife had started the divorce process. And I would really encourage you, if you are not coping, slow the process down, stop the process, or don't do anything, because when those feelings that we all know, they just are so real when we feel those things. When they pass and things look different, you might regret decisions you've taken. So it's really important, if you're not coping and you have to cope, if there's a process or a system that's running that you can't stop, get help rather than ignore it. It is something to be taken seriously. I was also incredibly lonely and sad, and I think when you've been part of a couple, that's one of the biggest things to have to deal with, is the loneliness. I would remember days would pass and I wouldn't speak to another adult, and that was hard. I can be emotional, but I was raising 2 children and I had kept down a full-time job. So one of the things that's very hard for me was a sense that I had no control. I'd lost control of my emotions and of my life and of any order. And I couldn't bring my husband back in line. It was very important for me to eventually to sort of acknowledge that was what I felt, was a lack of control. But it manifested itself in anger and frustration and sort of depression, a little bit of depression, I guess. I also felt very afraid and vulnerable. And I'm not a fearful person, but I took to locking the doors quite early in the evening, putting the alarm on, everybody sort of tucked up in bed, and it was only in my bed that I felt safe. And I don't think that's an unusual thing. And it's particularly hard if your loneliness is caused by the person who's gone, because you think, and I believed, that the only way this loneliness was going to be dealt with was if he came back, or if he would come back into my life, or he would talk to me, because he was the cause of my loneliness. And it seemed so simple a solution, just to take this loneliness away. One thing that really helped me was talking to my sisters on the phone regularly. And I really would stress that it is important to talk, if you're going to talk to somebody who is level-headed, who has your best interests at heart, and who is not going to encourage you in the blame game. I had a very, very close, very dear friend who said to me, "Oh, Marilyn, just acknowledge it, you picked a duff one." How does that help me when he's the father of my 2 children? And things like, "You're better off without him," they don't help, and you don't need people telling you that sort of thing. Beware also, I found, friends who encourage you, to go for revenge. Make him pay. None of these things eventually will help you to reach the relationship that perhaps you might want to one day if you have children together. Another thing that I think a lot of people do feel, which I felt hugely, was shame. So I came from a church background. I didn't know, my young, naive mind when I was a teenager, a youngster, I thought if I was a Christian and I married a Christian, I would be immune from divorce. There was a lot of shame for me. There was a lot of insecurity. When I went back to school after the summer holidays to take my children to school, it literally felt like there was a neon light flashing above my head saying, "Her husband's gone." Look, she's a single mother. Single mother. It was just a horrible term that I had to acknowledge as belonging to me. And I'm sorry to say that I felt that it was something to be ashamed of. And I feel very proud now. But at the time, it really felt this horrible burden. I didn't want to be a single mother. I didn't want to be divorced. those days were exhausting. And if any of you are there now, I just want to give you hope and encourage you and say that they will pass. But at the time, it feels relentless. It feels endless. I would really encourage you, as Eric has been talking, to acknowledge how you feel. Acknowledge the pain and the disappointment and the sadness. For me, the breakthrough came, I would say, when I accepted my situation and I accepted that my life was going to look different. I was no longer going to be part of a couple, probably, and I was going to have to create a new life, a new social network, and also just acknowledge that I was probably going to be fine doing it. I was able to do this because I accepted I couldn't change my husband's mind. And I would say that another thing that really helped me was going back to work. And even though at the time everything is falling apart around you, if you can find any kind of work, however menial or boring or beneath you that you think it is, that just takes you out of your home setting, especially the mothers if you're at home with smaller children, and gets you back working and gets you back socializing with people, it can be incredible for your self-esteem. I hadn't worked for years, but I managed to get a small job with my old firm, and it was incredible for my self-esteem. I was able to take my children on a skiing holiday, and that was just incredibly healing for all of us. I would say, it's sort of in summary of all the things that I did that really helped me in that beginning when I felt I was in a very deep hole, was to take, the best thing I can tell you is to take one day at a time. Be kind to yourselves and don't look too far into the future, which can be frightening because for most of you, probably you don't know what it's going to look like. You don't know how things are going to work out, and spending hours trying to figure out and to analyze what the other person is planning or going to do is not only exhausting, but can be just futile. And I have found for me, turning in on myself and trying to acknowledge my feelings and try to alleviate them or deal with them was much more positive than sitting in my bed, figuring out what he was doing, what he was going to do, what he was thinking of doing, and how to stop him or change his actions, because I couldn't do any of that. Thank you.
However hard things are at the moment, I can assure you that there is hope. At this time, your confidence will have had a huge knock to it. If your relationship has broken down, it's easy to feel uninteresting, unimportant. If one person has rejected you, it's easy to assume that everyone will reject you. You may feel humiliated, you may feel like a failure. However, this is categorically not true. This relationship may have, for whatever reason, ended. However, you are not a failure. You have other gifts, talents, and skills. And many people feel ill at ease with themselves. Whether it's in the workplace, with your social group, maybe it's at home, or in your place of hobbies. And that's very normal. It's simply that you are adjusting to a new set of circumstances. I can see, and I really do believe, that all my relationships that I have now, with my family, my friends, and my close confidants around me, they are much better, actually, because of the things that I have learned going through a relationship breakdown. Now, that's certainly not the route that I would have chosen, but it is what has happened. Now, all the issues that we've been talking about in this session, there's some big issues there. And we still need to try and get through our daily lives, get through each day. we have experienced a huge change in our lives. And many of the things that we've talked about are quite big. Depression, anger. These are big issues which can take some time to resolve. However, we all need to get through on a day-to-day basis. And so we've put together our top 10 tips for surviving on a daily basis. Our first one is take one day at a time. Drop the past, stop planning the future, and notice the moment. I love the expression that today is the most important day of our lives. Secondly, maybe start writing a journal. Just the process of writing down your thoughts and feelings can be helpful in themselves. It's also something that you can look back on, and actually you will see how you have got better. Thirdly, understand that you are in a grieving situation. You're grieving a loss. Those intense feelings that started at the beginning of that grieving process will subside. The storm will pass. Fourthly, try and appreciate others around you. To your friends and family, express your love for them. Tell them that you appreciate them. Fifthly, be kind to yourself. Focus your time on rebuilding your self-confidence. Try and stop doing the things that you don't like doing. Maybe focus on those activities that you used to really enjoy and you can start up again. This will rebuild your confidence and actually remind you of another deep truth, that you will find a way through this. Number 6, count your blessings at the end of each day. There may be other people in even worse situations as you. When I've visited hospitals, I've often understood that fact and seen people in hugely difficult situations in their lives. Some people have found it helpful to write down the things that are good in your life, your blessings at the end of each day. That might help you at another time when you're not feeling as optimistic. Number 7, enjoy laughter. It's okay to laugh, even though the general situation is bad. According to one study, children laugh around 400 times a day, and adults only 15. We need to redress that balance. Laughing reduces muscular tension, it improves breathing, it regulates the heartbeat, and also makes a great contribution to mental health. So watch some of those good comedy programs. Watch some of those good films. Try not to watch the ones with adultery or the relationship breakdown stuff. Ignore that. Pick the good films. I still actually can't watch those comedy programs with, the adulterous relationship or the real difficult family relationships. Pick the good films to watch. Number 8, do some exercise. This is not about trying to get fit. This is actually about releasing that tension and the stress that builds up in yourself. And just having a 15-minute quick walk will make a big difference. Try and do some more if you can. I really enjoyed doing something active. It was a great way of thinking as well as relieving that tension and stress. Number 9, try and help others as well. This might be difficult. You may be feeling that there's nothing that you can do to help anyone else. But even if you can smile at someone else in the supermarket queue, say hello to your neighbour with a smile on your face, then that will help. Try and help others around you. And the last one, number 10. Seek help for the bigger issues that you might need.
Don't be frightened of getting professional help if you think that will help you. Realize that this might be the worst moment in your lives, the hardest thing that you have to overcome in your life. Invest some money, invest some time. Do it if it needs it. Many, many people have experienced that is a great help and a support. In conclusion, this session often acts like a little bit of an emotional release. That balloon bursting, those feelings that you've recognized, that we've shouted out. Some of you may, however, be feeling, I don't feel like that. I feel pretty positive. I don't want to bring out the painful issues that we've been discussing. And I just encourage you to reflect on whether there's anything that you still need to resolve. The acid test for me is that you can talk about all your experience and talk about the events of the past without feeling the pain and the hurt. That's what real recovery is all about. The good news is that there are ways of resolving them. There are ways of overcoming those painful issues in our lives. And we're going to be talking a lot more about those in the next sessions. We've started talking about them tonight, but we're also going to be talking about different ways of dealing with those painful issues. These will be the tools that help you to recover successfully. Now, for some of you, you may feel that it's just a useful checklist to go through, and that's a great position to be in. I'd encourage you to keep coming back, though, because it's a healthy checklist to do, to make sure that you can cover every issue here before you go on to the next stage of your life. The whole course is designed to enable you to move on successfully. And all of us here who are helpers and leaders are in a way living testimonies to that fact, that a restored, healthy, enjoyable life in the future is possible. There is life after separation and divorce, even though you may not feel it nor see it at the moment. There is light at the end of that tunnel. At the end of each session, we're going to invite someone up who has been through their journey of separation and divorce, or who's still going through that journey.
Hello, I'd like to introduce you to Jo. Jo came on the course in 2016. So Jo, tell us what happened to you. How did you come to be on the course?
So about 6 years ago now, I was actually living in New York and had got to the point where, I really felt that the marriage was not going to continue. It didn't feel like it was something that was going to make me and him happy for the future. And so I left the marriage. I made the decision to leave the marriage. I actually stayed. I got a new apartment, a new job, and I tried to get a new life, but actually it just didn't really work. And so I moved back to the UK after about a year. And actually about a year later, I just decided that I really hadn't healed. And my parents told me about the course I think they'd heard about it through Holy Trinity Brompton. And so signed up online and decided to join the course.
So what had happened? What were the really hard things for you at that time?
I think at that time I was sort of struggling with sort of forgiving myself for what had happened. I felt huge amounts of sadness and just didn't feel that I had really understood perhaps what was going on for myself, why I was feeling the way I was feeling. I also felt that, I was sort of looking and searching for, things to help me, whether it was online, whether it was from, you know, from people. And I just felt that I wasn't really quite necessarily getting the answers that I needed. And that's why I kind of reached out to this idea of this course that would perhaps give me a little bit more of a fuller understanding of what was going on.
And did it? What helped you?
Do you know, undoubtedly it was actually being with people who really understood, and you almost didn't need to explain it. People implicitly just got it. I think the environment, it just felt friendly and open and welcoming. And the group that I was in, similar age, it was sort of amazing to find people who were experiencing something very similar. And in fact, the connections we created through one another was really quite powerful. And they actually went on to be some very good friends of mine. And I also think things like hearing other people's stories also gave me an insight into perhaps different perspectives. And Eric himself actually was very inspirational, just this absolute belief and conviction that things would get better. And I think in many ways you just needed to hear that. You needed to kind of feel that there was this sort of raft to hold on to. And so I found it very beneficial.
So just sticking on that period of time for a minute, I mean, it must have been incredibly painful. Can you describe that to us? I mean, how painful was it? How did that manifest itself in your daily life?
So it was quite interesting. So at the time I had actually started a new role working in New York, which in itself, as we know, is very difficult. I'd also moved apartments and, you know, had left my marriage. It was in many ways, it was like being on a roller coaster. So, you know, massive amounts of emotions in terms of feeling very sad, feeling very kind of confused, or not always knowing if I'd made the right decision or not. And in many ways, I kind of was using my work as a way of you know, getting through the day, you know, each day. And then at nights, I would find that I'd leave the office and sort of fall and crumble into sort of tearful bits. So it was an incredibly challenging time to find, you know, within myself a resilience to keep going and to believe that I'd made the right decision and that there was, you know, light ahead. I had to really have conviction and belief that I'd done the right thing.
Mm. And so that went on for a long period of time. When did you feel that things started to change for you?
I have to be honest, it was, you know, quite a long period of time. I think really what was really going on was this kind of idea for me that I couldn't forgive myself. So we had got married, we had moved to New York together, and really in many ways, perhaps almost out of the blue, I had decided to leave the marriage. You know, we had drifted, the intimacy was no longer there. We really were just flatmates at that point. And I think really struggling to forgive myself and feeling huge amounts of guilt is what really kind of hung on to me and clung on to me, and perhaps just didn't allow me to heal myself.
Mm-hmm. So did that change? Do you still feel that guilt? I mean, where are you at now?
So it was really interesting because I don't think I really tackled it. I think I tried to sort of in many ways ignore it by, you know, using work or, you know, friends, or filling my life with lots of other things, which in itself is actually a great thing to do, because I think, you know, you do need to find yourself in all of this. But I think what I wasn't doing is really tackling what was actually going on. And, you know, I came to a realization that actually it was my own self-worth and self-esteem that had taken a big hit, both in terms of within the marriage. So, you know, my ex, you know, was not interested in intimacy. And then also afterwards, in terms of feeling like I had failed and I had let him down. And so what I actually did was I took myself to counselling, which I hadn't actually been particularly open to before. And I really kind of gave myself that time to sort of explore and really understand what was making me feel so bad about myself, and what it was about this sort of, you know, the self-esteem or the self-worth that was holding me back. And I think it really investing in understanding yourself and what was sort of driving, you know, emotions and why you're feeling a certain way is a big part of the healing process.
So how do you feel now? I mean, we're 4 years on. How do you feel?
Yeah, it's really interesting because I wouldn't say that I regretted leaving my marriage, but I regret the hurt that, you know, I caused my ex. You know, actually, you know, it's wonderful. He's actually remarried and he's recently had a baby, and he's stayed in New York, which was always his dream. So in many ways, perhaps leaving was also allowing to sort of set him free to find his own pathway. It's certainly taken me a long time, but I think it was also a journey that I had to go on. So, you know, investing in understanding myself, understanding why, you know, I was feeling such sadness, and finding a way to really sort of, you know, find my own happiness was in itself a journey that I think perhaps if we have the time that we do actually take, you know, I really do feel happy and happiness in terms of probably the journey that I've had to go on, but also where I am today.
So if you had one thing you could say to someone who's going through divorce or separation right now, what would it be?
So I read this amazing book, very influential book called, or certainly on me, called A Million Little Pieces by James Frey. And in it, he talks about his journey as being a drug addict. And it's incredibly visceral, this book. In this book, he has a friend called Leonard. And Leonard always says to James, you know, in his darkest moments, just hold on. And so I think that would be my advice to people is it's going to feel like you are in the surf many, many times, where sometimes you might be riding that wave and you feel possibility and you think there's hope. And then the next minute you're being sucked back into the surf and it feels turbulent and it feels very dark. So my advice really would be to hold on, because I think we have to feel the way we're feeling, to not shut the world out and not shut friends and families out, and actually to be open to how you're feeling and explore that, and actually believe that, you know, things will get easier. But I think you have to experience the sadness and the hurt in order to find the happiness in the end.
Jo, that's brilliant. Thank you very much. Brave lady. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming on this session, the first session of Restored Lives. Well done for making it and getting through this session, which can be a hard session because we're looking at the pain of separation and divorce. The next session will be a little bit more straightforward, looking at the more positive elements of the course and the building blocks that we all need to move forward successfully. I'd encourage you to keep in touch with your group leader if you'd like, over the next few days. It's so important not to feel isolated, and that's what we're here for coming alongside you. Each evening we finish off with a short prayer, so maybe we just close our eyes and I'll just say this prayer. Lord, thank you for bringing us together here on this session. Thank you for giving your hope. We pray that you would pour your hope, love and grace into each one of our lives to heal the hurts of the past and to give us your peace and give your hope for the future. Amen. I look forward to seeing you in the next session.